Peace and love, everyone. Love and peace. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, please like and subscribe. And I'm Queen Tamara of Astro Hill North Wellness Center. And I want to say welcome to everyone tonight. It's a beautiful Thursday, and I had to change our weekly show to Thursday tonight because there was a lot going on this week, and I'm just excited for the new changes, and it's almost the spring equinox, and so much potential for new projects and things are coming my way. I hope the same is going on for you as well. So peace and love, everyone. If you're listening, please comment in the chat section, and I hope to hear from you and hope to have an engaging, exciting interactive conversation this evening as we talk about a very important topic. We talked about this a little while ago on another show. So this is kind of like a part two, and it's called Normalizing Insanity, and focusing on mental health. In this day and time, we hear a lot of talk about mental health. And, I grew up in the 80s, and you didn't hear people address mental health issues. People act like they were ashamed of things like depression, bipolar disorder. Um, Going to see therapists was considered taboo or embarrassing. People didn't talk about it. People look down on you if you had to go to therapy, or if you chose to do that for yourself. So it's not really an issue of you had to go, but you chose to do what was necessary for yourself and seeking treatment for different issues. That was considered disturbing and crazy. However, the people who were judging the people who were going to get therapy had some issues themselves. And so tonight we're going to be talking about this very important topic, because the time period that we're living in now, family, is a time of great growth and expansion. We're moving into the new earth and the golden age, and this is the generation and the time to break the cycles of abuse from the past, to break the cycles of the narcissism, break the cycles of toxic family patterns, toxic lifestyles, and just the things that were accepted in the past. They're no longer accepted. People are starting to speak up. People are starting to hold themselves and others accountable for certain types of behavior. And people are seeking healing as they break generational curses and unhealthy behavior patterns and unhealthy thought patterns. For example, tonight I have on my white because I just left a center in DC where I taught a chair yoga class, and it was a beautiful experience. And this place had like a wellness day, and a woman invited me to come there, and she opened up in song, and I'm trying to think. We did so much exciting stuff tonight, but she opened up in song and spoken word, and then we moved into listening to, closing our eyes and doing a silent meditation, listening to the crystal bowls as she played them. Then I did the chair yoga and meditation session, and then we ended by playing the tuning forks and crystal bowls, and just allowing the energy to reverberate and to circulate and to heal. And we shared our experiences, and it was just such a beautiful, enlightening, healing experience. And it's something that I wish everybody could have, opportunities like this. But in the past, things like this, I never saw them. I never heard of them. They seem not to exist. And now that these things are starting to become normal, people are starting to have wellness days on their jobs. People are focusing more on their mental health. There's been a great shift in the workforce where they call it the great walkout or something, where a lot of people have quit their jobs that were extremely high stressed and toxic environments that were really unhealthy for them emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so many people have opted to work from home, to do remote jobs. I've met some people who've actually left the country, they work remotely. And so they just, all they needed was a computer with them, and they went overseas to stay and live. And the money that they're making is funding their new lifestyle with the remote work, and they're happy with that, and they're very satisfied. And a lot of folks I know have started businesses in the last few years, um, changed careers. I'm one of those people. And because we realize that our mental health and our spiritual health is more important. Ashe, sister, thank you. And from Mons to Shannon, thank you so much. I hope I pronounced that right. Peace and love. Thank you. So we now are living in a time period where we are recognizing that our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health is worth so much more than a job. It's not healthy and it's not fair to have to choose between compromising your mental well-being and a paycheck. And in the past, a lot of people just dealt with that. They just dealt with toxicity, unhealthy, unhappy, meaningless jobs because they had a family to support. They had to support themselves. They had a lot of bills or a lot of debt or whatever. And a lot of those people were dying inside, emotionally and spiritually. A lot of people would tell me stories like they would have to they couldn't go to work sober. A lot of people say, the night before they had to drink, or they had to have a drink in their coffee before they went to work, or they had to smoke, a little something before they went to work, just to numb themselves, just to get through the day, because they were so unhappy, so dissatisfied with their jobs, or they were being abused. And I can bear witness that the workplace can be a very toxic place. Some of us have narcissistic and abusive bosses and coworkers, people who want to take advantage of others, people who are predatory, people who are cruel. You may be dealing, some people may have dealt with overt racism on the job, verbal abuse, even physical abuse. I had a friend who, one of her coworkers yelled at her and threw a chair at her, and she got disciplined for that and fussed at by the supervisor, not the woman who threw the chair at her, which is the aggressive action. And many of us have similar stories and similar experiences, and thank goodness that those kind of behaviors and those kind of experiences are a thing of the past now, because many people are saying, you know what, F this job, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to work remotely, or I'm going to do something else. And there's been a lot of creativity in the last few years. Things that people are doing, people are ride sharing or whatever, because their soul wasn't being fed by the job. And because their soul wasn't being fed, they weren't happy. They weren't at peace. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, the normalizing of insanity. This society can be very toxic, and that it is what it is. It can be very toxic. And Babylon, as I call it, is just that. It's just a wicked place, and it can be very dangerous for our health. The dominant mind frame is a contaminant for many of us, and there's things that we all do and we should do to remove ourselves from that thought process and that way of thinking. And many of us, having grown up in this Babylon, or having grown up and being exposed to certain behaviors that we were taught to just deal with and cope with, was very, very harmful for us. So we're coming out of the reason why it seems like mental illnesses and mental health issues are on the rise is only because for so long people ignored these things and made excuses for them and didn't hold people accountable. And now we're moving away from that period of spiritual darkness and into a time of more spiritual enlightenment. Light codes are coming to earth, and like, I would probably say like never before. And people are waking up. It's a mass waking up going on, and people just not standing for things that they used to tolerate in the past. The older generation, um like I said, we were living in a time of great spiritual darkness. They tolerated things, they normalized things. They Many of us were raised in environments that were just pure insanity, pure toxicity, pure wickedness. And we grew up, many of us, imitating those same behaviors because this is what we were taught was okay and acceptable. Or we took on the behaviors of our abusers, and many of us had to adopt personalities or behaviors that was like a coping mechanism for the abuse that we were growing up in, or the neglect that we were being subjected to. And we adopted unhealthy thought patterns and unhealthy behaviors as an act of protecting and preserving ourselves. We shut down emotionally. When many of us were abused or neglected, or even if you're witnessing it, um that is traumatic. So the trauma that many of us grew up with, whether it was direct or indirect, had an effect on us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And many of us um, adopted unhealthy behavior patterns. We shut down emotionally. Many of us suffered soul loss, where we actually lost a part of our soul, our energy, as we were going through these things. And will be searching our whole lives, oftentimes looking for this missing part of us, or this lost energy, or just trying to um, maintain balance and find ourselves, if you will. And it's very unfortunate that this went on for generations, and many people now are starting to awaken and seek healing. People, in like never before, are doing healing retreats, exploring plant medicine ceremonies, in efforts to heal, in efforts to release the trauma, because for so long many people lived with hurt and trauma and didn't know how to seek healing. The healing is what we needed, and that is what we need. We all need healing. We all need healing at some point in our lives. um and as a healer, as a shamanic healer, I know that what affects us physically also affects us mentally and spiritually, and it will radiate out in everything that we do if we do not seek healing, which is what we all need. So, coming out of this time of great spiritual darkness and wickedness, we're moving into an era now where people are talking about things that used to be taboo, and talking about breaking the cycles. A lot of parents are in this generation are raising their children very different from the way that they would raise, right or wrong. Some people, but it's an effort to do things different. I went to a parenting class years ago when my children were in elementary school, and the person facilitating the class said that the way you raise your children will affect the next 7 generations. And I was like, wow, that's a heavy responsibility. um I'm just thinking about, myself and my immediate children, but the way that I am rearing them and training them and the things that I'm teaching them, they'll pass down to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So we have to remember sometimes that we are someone's ancestors, that we're going to be, ancestors one day. So the things that we're instilling in our youth, and also the things that we're doing, even if you don't have children of your own, other people, children may be watching you, or you may be an inspiration to them, and you got to be mindful of that. What impact are you making on the next generation? How are you affecting them? If you're a person that has been an absentee parent, you have to think about that. How does that affect your youth and the next generation? And if you are trying to heal your relationship with your children, or your parents, it affects all of you and the next generation. So that is something also that we need to keep in mind when we think about this, breaking this cycle of mental instability and insanity. And the dominant culture, like I said, can be a contaminant to our minds with all the things that are around us. And it's so much negativity. Sometimes you feel inundated in it. So I wanted to take a minute to read to you all the definition of schizophrenia. And this is defined as a mental disorder. It's defined as a mental disorder in which people interpret reality abnormally. That's just a small brief definition. Schizophrenia is a serious mental disorder in which people interpret reality abnormally. And the reason why I chose to read that is because it feels like we are in a society that is based on abnormal perceptions of reality. Many of us grew up and were taught to see things a certain way when you knew that that wasn't right. And to evil was and negativity and wrong was made fair seeming. A lot of us were taught that was up is down, was left is right, was right is wrong, was wrong is right, and it's just like creating a lot of confusion. And I remember growing up and around the adults that I grew up around, and I witnessed a lot of disturbing behavior, a lot. And I was this stuff, a lot of it was ignored and downplayed, which is also very unhealthy. And people didn't characterize and define a lot of the mental disorders that we were being subjected to. And people act like these things were okay, and that if you had a problem with it, then you were the person that had a problem, not the person that was actually sick. Um, and you can't heal an environment when everybody around you is sick. It's just not it's not healthy. And so mental health was not addressed and was ignored. I mean, I grew up seeing all kinds of stuff in the family, um, in houses of worship, in the street, amongst other people's families. It was just a lot of disturbing behavior, a lot of mental illness on all levels. A lot of abuse are going around, and many of us were taught to just deal with these things, to ignore it. People will say things like, well, so what, it didn't kill you, or whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. um that didn't happen, don't say that about that person. Well, I know they did it, but don't talk about it. Whatever happens in this house stays in this house. You don't discuss our business with other people. um so and so wouldn't do something like that. You're making it up for attention. Just all kinds of stuff. Um, Bad behaviors were hidden and ignored, and a lot of things that went on when I was growing up, people would say, well, that's their business. Whatever they do, that's between them and God. You can't judge, or that's their business, you stay out of it. However, we know that if there's something bad going on with someone else, it will affect other people around you. For example, there's been several incidents here in the area I live, involving domestic violence or partner violence, and it affected other people. There was a situation here in Maryland a few years ago where a woman was running from her spouse and went to a neighbor's house to call for help. And when the neighbor opened the door to try to like intervene or protect or let her in to use the phone or whatever the situation may be, the husband shot the man that was trying to protect the neighbor. So that's a situation where your problem becomes someone else, everybody else's problem, because now the neighbors are getting shot because you all are having problems in your house. Then there's other situations where there was domestic violence in some homes, and a child, a teenager, tried to step in and protect their parent who was being assaulted, and they ended up getting killed. Um, Good Samaritans getting hurt trying to stop other things that are happening around them, around us. Or, like I said, people's problems trickle out to other people. Like, there's people who, family members know that they have mental health issues, that they're having breakdowns, that they're facing depression, and they ignore it, or they'll say things like, oh, they just going through something, but refuse to get them or make them get help or to seek help. And then that person will have a full psychological breakdown and hurt everybody in the house, go to work and hurt people. You hear these stories over and over again. They're endless. Person went on the rampage, hurt, killed a family, went to work, shot up some more people, turned a gun on themselves, or they just doing all kinds of things, terrorizing their neighborhood, and people know about this and they just sweep it under the rug, or they say it's not my problem, not my business, that's their family, you stay out of it, I'm staying out of it, whatever. And I'm not saying be nosy Nelly or nothing like that, but you have to be aware of these behaviors, that they are not normal, not acceptable, and somebody needs to say and do something about it, especially if it's your own household or your own family members. But unfortunately, many of us grew up in toxic family situations where, I'm going to read the definition again. Um, with people who had serious mental disorders in which they interpreted reality abnormally. And so we didn't know how to define what's illness and what's not. I was growing up, I thought that mental illness was only something that affected people who were like homeless, or people who lived in mental health facilities. I didn't realize that there was different levels to it, and there was different types of disorders. And then as I grew up and I began to learn about all of them, many of them went undiagnosed and untreated, because once again there was that stigma, that people didn't want to get help for these kind of issues because they felt ashamed, they felt embarrassed, or they were in denial. And a lot of times families or people just didn't know that they had a mental illness. I've met people who would laugh when, family members say they're hearing voices, and they don't realize that this person is, in need of some kind of help, and they just, ignore it. Alcoholism was ignored and kind of accepted a little bit more than let's say, drug addiction or hard drugs. Drug addiction was treated like and looked at as a criminal activity versus a person having a serious spiritual and emotional and mental problem where they may be trying to self-medicate. I didn't even hear terms like that growing up, but they may be trying to self-medicate or using, the drugs or the alcohol to numb themselves from certain types of trauma, certain types of issues. And so all of those things were treated like criminal behavior versus this is an expression of someone's sickness and that they need help. Um, so now we're living in a time period where people are starting to hold people more accountable for things, which is why it seems like mental health issues are on the rise. People are speaking up more. The Me Too movement exposed a lot of things that were happening for a long time that were ignored, and people were given perpetrators were given a slap on the wrist. People made excuses for a lot of sexually deviant behavior and ignored it. Many people would report things like this to sexual harassment or assaults to their, on the job, to supervisors, and they would get disciplined for reporting. They would be called snitches. Um, People were shamed when they came forward about sexual abuse or sexual misconduct or sexual harassment. Um, Many people would just run away when these things were happening. And oftentimes victims were blamed and shamed for these kinds of things. And now people are starting to feel more comfortable coming forward, talking about these things. There's more safe spaces and safe zones for them when they come forward and speak on these issues. And people feel they're believed a little bit more now than versus years ago. And the reason why a lot of this stuff went on for so long and caused so much damage is because of the shame that the victims were made to feel, and how people were taught to be silent about these things. Be silent about sexual abuse, be silent about sexual harassment, be silent about, just sexual misconduct and the victim blaming. So now we're moving in, thank God we're moving into a different era where people feel it's okay to come forward and say, I was abused or I was mistreated, and break the cycle. Many of us, like I said, we've adopted a lot of unhealthy behaviors just to cope and survive, and we have to recognize those behaviors as unhealthy coping mechanism. Many coping mechanisms to abuse and neglect and trauma, and many of us will deny the pain that we're feeling or the emotional things that we have because we may have been abused or neglected growing up, and people never validated your feelings. Maybe you were never believed or allowed to speak your truth and never given a voice to certain types of behaviors that were happening to you or trauma. Maybe no one ever asked you, how do you feel, like what's going on with you, maybe, things like that. And so you may be somebody that adopted behaviors like, being emotionally detached or shut down. You may not be you may be have adopted the behavior of not being in touch with your emotions and your feelings because for so long you had to ignore them and numb yourself just to cope with certain things like abuse, neglect, trauma, whatever. And many of us have never had a safe space where we could come forward and express how we feel and have our feelings validated or even acknowledged. And things like that. Many of us didn't know how to self-soothe. And this is why this is one of the reasons why so many people turn to substance abuse, post-traumatic because they don't have the self-soothing skills, they don't have coping skills to deal with certain things, especially stress and the effects of trauma. And so no one, taught us this, and this is something that you have to learn. And so many people don't know how to handle stressful situations. They shut down, they become, highly agitated, even violent sometimes, self-destructive, um, will run away when the going gets tough or things are stressing them, have to turn to substance abuse just to cope with it, but that's not a healthy way to cope. It's really like just avoiding the situation. But this is all this outlet that some people have. This is the only outlet, is let me, use something to numb myself so I can get through this and keep going, which is not healthy. And then eventually you're going to keep doing this, and then you're going to reach a burnout point or hit a brick wall where you have to face the trauma and have to face um, the things that are happening, that have happened to you. And when you're growing up or in a situation where you're not being validated, you're not being, your feelings not being validated, and where you're being abused and neglected, you don't have um, your boundaries are not respected and honored. And so you really don't know how to express feelings and how to express, not only how to express your feelings, but you'll lose your voice in those situations, the voice that speaks up for you and protects you. And so you'll end up just, it's almost like you're being buried alive when you're going through these things. And this is what a lot of people deal with and have been dealing with for generations. They just dealt with the trauma, they ignored it, they pretended it wasn't there. It was like you know a demon that you had to put in the closet and just leave it. And then occasionally, it'll stick its foot out, or you'll hear it moving around or something, and it'll manifest, and then you just have to, push it back in the closet again. And this is what a lot of people live with on a daily basis, is hiding who they really are, hiding their feelings, wearing a mask in public, pretending to be okay, pretending to be fine, because there's no other outlet. I've seen people experience, like children experience trauma, witness something horrific, and when they would cry, the parent would say, shut up, or I'm gonna give you something to cry for, or you better not cry. Something tragic happened, you better not cry, I'm gonna give you something to cry. This kind of thing, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this is what was the norm for a lot of people. And it's teaching you that your feelings don't matter, that whatever happens to you, you need to just deal with it by not crying and not expressing your feelings. And many of us don't know how to express our feelings. We don't, that calls emotional immaturity. And it had a negative impact not only on our own spirits and souls and our own mental health, but how we related to other people, by hiding how we really felt, getting into toxic relationships, and just being numb and shut down because nobody wants to feel anything, because in the past when you felt something, you got shamed for it. You were made to feel bad when you express yourself, or in cases of abuse and neglect, being vulnerable and needy was met with harshness and violence or verbal abuse. And so you had to be hard, you had to be tough on the exterior. And like I said, it was like a mental death that the people were living in for so long. And the best way to remedy all of that is to seek healing from, start with someone that can assist you with the spiritual healing aspect, and seek different ways of healing. But right now tonight we're going to focus more on the normalizing part and how that has impacted us. When you're trying to preserve your mental health and heal yourself, one of the things you want to do after you identify that these behaviors are insane and that they are not normal, they're not healthy, they're not okay, you may have to go no contact with those toxic people, just to preserve your own mental health. And so that could be family members, that could be so-called friends, um, toxic jobs, toxic, people in your circle. And if they're all toxic or not feeding your soul or not doing things that are validating and providing safe space for you to be yourself and the best version of yourself, then you may have to go. Well, I would go no contact with those people. And they may not understand it at first, but you have to let them know and set boundaries that the relationship is toxic, is not good for your health, mentally and spiritually and physically, and you remove yourself from those kind of people. Oftentimes people stayed in unhealthy relationships because that was the unhealthy pattern that was the example that was set before them, or they were told to just accept certain things. Like I've met countless numbers of women who have been in abusive relationships, and when they went to their family for support, sometimes the family would turn on them. Mothers and fathers sometimes would tell them, that's y'all problem, you deal with it. You can't get a divorce, that's damaging to the children. Where you going to go, you got children, so you're going to have to deal with it. um that person has money and you don't, so you're gonna have to just stay there and tolerate it. And this was acceptable for a long time. And so things like that, you have to recognize that these behavior patterns, um that you may have been taught, and this way of thinking has been detrimental to you, and you have to break the cycle by setting the boundaries and maybe going no contact with these people. Okay. This Don't allow people to make you feel ashamed or bad when you decide to go no contact, to preserve your own well-being. They will do that, especially the narcissists, because they won't respect boundaries. But you have to assert yourself and to let people know that you are not going to tolerate certain things, and you're going to distance yourself from certain types of behaviors and people. And if they have a problem with it, tell them to kick rocks or whatever, but it's not going to be tolerated. And it's up to you to break that cycle. No one else is going to do that for you. You have to take that step for yourself to break that cycle and break the abuse and break the madness. Yes, it may be a lonely road, but you will find others like-minded like you as you heal your own self and heal your life. You will grow and develop, and you will develop and meet a new set of friends, new family, even if need be. And just focus more on your healing, because it's for you. It's this was the best thing for you. um don't think of yourself as a victim. If you have been violated, abused, or mistreated by people, and made to feel like it was your fault, or they didn't do anything wrong and you're just too sensitive, and whatever the situation may be, um as you heal, recognize that you're not a victim, you're a survivor. And when you accept that you are surviving something versus victimhood, you're accepting that you have power, you're claiming your power back, you're taking your power back from the other person that or situation that made you feel powerless and abused. And as you heal and grow and develop, you are becoming the hero of your own story. As you heal yourself, like I said, healing yourself, you're going to heal generations after you. So as you heal, you're becoming the hero of your own story. As you set boundaries, you're becoming a hero of your own story, your own life story. As you heal yourself and break those cycles and heal your mind, you are doing something heroic for yourself. You're being your own superhero. And you, just like Superman or Superwoman, they fly above and beyond, and they have superhuman strength. Well, you're exhibiting superhuman abilities by healing yourself, by standing up for yourself, by recognizing that this kind of stuff is not healthy, is not acceptable, and is not okay. So that's what we all need to work towards. I could sit here this a whole hour and talk about all the abuse and things that I've witnessed and heard and seen. Um, Generations of families tolerating predators. People sitting at the table, is the holidays, and their predator right at the other end of the table eating, and everybody in the family is celebrating this person, and you've been told that what you claim happened never happened, or um people going to, staying on jobs for years that were so toxic that they ended up getting sick, and then they went out on sick leave, and then they passed, or retired, forced retirement, and then they passed away. Or there's just such a myriad of endless negative stories. But now we are moving towards a time where we're recognizing in large numbers, in mass numbers, that there is a very supreme sickness in our society that is causing a lot of dysfunction and a lot of madness, mayhem, and unhealthy patterns. And so many people are moving towards breaking the cycles now and moving towards seeking help, getting help, healing their minds, healing their souls and their bodies, and healing their families by healing themselves first. So before you heal anybody else, start with you. It's a courageous step in the right direction, breaking the cycle, healing your mind. What if your family members say, you're being brainwashed, you tell them, yes, my brain is being washed of the filth that you all have put and imposed upon me. I'm washing it away. And like I said, don't be afraid to set boundaries. Don't be afraid to go no contact with people that are causing you nothing but heartache and ish. Just get rid of them. Even if you need to move to another city, another state, another country, to start over and start afresh, and just look at it that, you're starting a new life. And in order to start the new life, something old has to die and has to be shed. So shed those old toxic relationships, those toxic work environments, shed those toxic so-called family members and people that don't value you, don't honor you, um, don't want to help you grow and develop and be the best version of yourself, but instead are, causing the opposite effect on you. So just focus on the positive, focus on the healing, focus on the boundary setting, focus on creating the new narrative for yourself as you are becoming the hero of your own life story and the shero of your own life story. You're writing a new story for yourself, a new beginning, and you're the author. So you're going to write your story any way that you want. And remember, you are the hero, you or the shero, you are the focused person, the focal person. And so you write that story, your new narrative, as you want to see yourself in the best version, in the highest version of yourself, in the happiest, healthiest, whole version of yourself. So I hope this was helpful, family. Um, so much healing needs to take place, especially in our families when it comes to breaking generational curses. And I hope this was helpful. I hope you found it useful. Please comment in the comment section. Let me know what steps you have taken towards breaking the insanity and healing yourselves and, your families, if they're willing and on board with the healing process. I love to hear from you. I thank you all for watching every week, and I thank you for supporting the show on Plugged In Radio Network. I really appreciate that. And peace and love, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.